she'd start working again when they moved. They'd move, and okay, now let me start working on this again, and then move again, and so on. So a number of times she kept working on this dissertation. And the dissertation was about capital theory. And who do you think her dissertation director was? It's Frank Knight. Okay? Now, here's the empirical part. I think it's empirically almost dead sure that a married couple will get along fine with one another only if they stay out of each other's concentration in economics, okay? So Milton didn't say anything about anything bad about Friedman's capital theory. He stayed out. They were two happy people. I mean, two lucky people. Yeah, if he had denied that was a good capital theory, they may not have been so lucky. So I think that might have had something to do with it. Okay. Well, let's go on. Let's see what we've got here. So this is my capital stock. It's same color anyhow. And we need to add do not open, all right? And then let me get something going. There it is. You got the flow of consumption and the maintenance of capital. See, so you get a feedback. And in fact, that maintenance has to be just right so that the capital stock doesn't increase or doesn't decrease. It just stays the same. And that's the steady state, isn't it? And so you can see what's in green, that's the flow of consumption. And then the stock plus the maintenance are the stock of capital. And the claim is, by Knight, is that the maintenance is just a technical detail. It's a technical detail. You'd think it wasn't, but and by making it a technical detail, then he can get his notion of his stock flow. Okay, let's go on. All right. So I put a box around this because both of those things, the actual capital stock plus the maintenance, is what Knight is taking to be capital. Okay, so the capital stock includes maintenance as a technical detail. Again, there is technical in quotes. Hence, the stock of capital is permanent, and that's in quotes. Now, it drove me nuts reading Knight to see all these quotes like this. And I learned from Jerry O'Driscoll. He was one of our early Austrians that wrote a dissertation at UCLA. And he clued me into some of the ways that Knight expressed himself. And so Knight would say capital stock is permanent in a sense. Okay, you can see this all through his writing. Sometimes he would say the stock is permanent as it were. Okay? The stock is permanent, so to speak. Wait a minute. You get tired of saying that and he just puts quotation marks on it. Okay. So a permanent capital stock yields a perpetual flow. That's the idea. And of course the qualifications are, in a sense, as it were, so to speak. That's a strange capital theory, but that's it, okay? Now, we even go a step further here. We've got capital stock and the flow of consumption. But what Knight really liked to do is change this to sources. He calls it sources yielding services. And that seems like a sort of a roundabout way of putting things. There's sources, so we don't call it capital, we call it sources. And then he says there's only one factor of production. This is odd. It's capital, okay, in the broad sense of sources. So land, labor, and capital are all capital in the broad sense. So in other words, labor means the laborer's abilitiness to work, whether you're actually working or not. That's the capital aspect of it. And so we change the maintenance to sources. You got to maintain sources, and you have a flow of services. Now you might wonder, what's the difference going from consumption, let's say, to services? Well, one thing you could do is take, the production, let's say, of refrigerators, and then the refrigerator becoming a consumption good, all right? But it's a good, it's something, and it's a durable good. Knight doesn't want it to be durable. He wants it just the services of the refrigerator. That's what we're looking at, not the whole refrigerator. It's just the current services of it. And the sources of it, the sources of that service, of course, are the refrigerator. That's the way it works. And so it's really a dimensional difference. One's a stock and one's a flow, in the extreme, okay? It goes like that. Now, this is going to be challenging, but I think we can do it. I'll call that sources again, and maintenance of sources and services. And I'm going to read this, but you can't just start reading the thing. You have to realize that it's full of sources and services, enough to make your head swim. And it helps if you identify where those are right now. So there they all are. And this is a quote by Milton Friedman. In other words, Friedman, doing his capital theory, has cabbaged on to Knight, and he's doing it in terms of services and sources. And then the key thing I've underlined is at the same time. This is stuff that's all happening at once, okay? There's no time. Well, let's see if I can read it. I'm not sure I can, but the key feature, and he's talking about of the process in which interest rates have been lowered, and that's what sets off a business cycle, okay? At least the Austrian thinks it sets off a business cycle, but Friedman doubts it, because the key feature of the process is that it tends to raise the price of sources of both producer and consumer services relative to the prices of the services themselves. It therefore encourages the production of such sources and at the same time the direct acquisition of the services rather than of the sources. Are you with me? But these reactions in their turn tend to raise the price of the services relative to the price of sources, so that is to undo the initial effects on the interest rate, and that's all at once, okay? So as soon as that interest rate goes down, then just in a flash, all of that happens, and it doesn't make any difference in anything from that point on. And that's Friedman, okay? Now, to be fair about this, let's see, it goes on, there's one more part of it where he's not talking about it. He says the final result may be a rise in expenditures in all directions without any change in the interest rate at all. Well, how could it be any change? Because it went down and up in a split second. There wasn't any time for it, okay? No change at all in the interest rate. Interest rates and asset prices may simply be the conduit through which the effect of monetary change is transmitted to expenditures without being altered at all. And of course what happens is that the interest rate is altered over a fairly large point in a span of time until it finally does adjust to its old level, and maybe not even quite its own level because a lot of misallocation has gone on in between. And it's true that if all of this change in interest rate happens at once, both down and up, yeah, there's no effect, right? Now, in fairness to Friedman, in this same section, in the article, the 1961 article that I'm citing, in the same section, he talked about how things would be different if you're thinking in terms of building some kind of an industrial building or creating machines or doing things that actually do take time. Well, of course it would be very different. In fact, that's the thing that is the focus of the Austrians in seeing what's going on, okay? And yet he drops that. You know, he says that, but it doesn't become part of his theory. He sticks with the Knightian view, a strange thing. Okay. Now, another strange thing, let me do that again. Felt good. Even though Knight thinks of that feedback as a technical issue, he does allow that it can be more than enough to keep the capital intact, okay? Or it could be less than enough to keep the capital intact. Well, those would have to be decisions, wouldn't they? You know, you could over-maintain or under-maintain or whatever. That'd be decision. Well, how is it that it's technical if it just keeps it intact, but you have the choice of beefing it up or letting it run out, okay? But if you do let it run, if you do beef it up, you get something like this, okay? And if you let it go the other way, you get something like this. It's gone, okay? So that would have to be a matter of choice, right? Where are we time-wise? Yeah. So here's the summary. Knight and Hayek. So maintenance is a technical detail, but we're wondering about that last slide or so. Okay. Hayek, maintenance is a matter of choice. You could run the thing day and night if you want to get some products out the door for some specific reason, and waste away your machine. Capital is permanent. No, capital depreciates but is augmentable. Beef it up, replace it, and so on. Capital is the only factor. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Capital is heterogeneous.